Stop the transcription, of course. We will add that later. All right, guys, here we go. Frontend Lightning Talks, our last edition of this year. It will be very awesome today, the 16th of November, of course. There are some house rules, so let's see about those. Questions are mainly asked in the chat. In the end of the evening, we can ask them in person, of course. And during a break, we have some chatting moments because we like to interact with each other, learn and laugh, of course. But most importantly, we're going to do a small introduction of the Frontend Lightning Talks, which the subject of today is front-end frameworks. We have a very cool, well, 3 speakers basically. So we have Ankit, Sander, and another Sander, so that's great. They're already here in the chat, which is nice. We hope to interact as much as possible with you. Please be aware, this session will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if there's anything personal information or you don't want your face on YouTube, put your camera off. If not, go ahead and enjoy the show. So I hope you will be ready for the school format today, because we're going to start. This is the welcome, the introduction. This introduction will only take about 10 minutes. After that, we have 3 different speakers, 3 different subjects, but all related to front-end frameworks. So that's really cool as well. We will start with Ankit, of course, with not Nuxt, not Next, but NestJS. So that's really cool. After that, we have a small break of 5 minutes so we can stretch our legs and, of course, drink something or eat something as well. So we all stay hydrated, which is important. After that, we have Astro, your web on a diet from Sander. He's also here in the chat. Nice wave. And then we have learning to love HATEOAS from Sander as well. We have also nice, great wall here. And in the end, closing and questions. And maybe that's nice to know. The football match is at 20:30, I guess. So that's always good timing for us. Before we start, we want to mention something about Soasti. This will not be a recruitment speech or anything like that, because this is hosted by the front-end core team of Soasti, and we like to learn with each other about more front-end. And that's why we have the school meeting. This is all done in our free and spare time, basically. So that's really cool as well. But within Soasti, we do much more stuff. For instance, DevOps, cloud, security, you name it, and we probably got it. Also, the clients, you name it, and we've probably got it. So that's really cool as well. Next to front-end, if you're probably interested in front-end, then you're here. But if you want to follow some Java, that's also possible. I know this is a bit not nice to say Java here, but JavaScript is awesome, of course. That's also easy to follow for us at Soasti, because we have different communities. We will link a meetup page for that as well. They organizing next week a Java course, so that's also cool. And for testers, for instance, we have QX Day at Soasti, and with our front-end core team, we also do a lot with Frontmania. And if it's possible to do something physical again, we will of course do that and enjoy a nice pizza with each other. But you're looking at the screen, which we did this year, and I'm happy to announce we're back next year, also with different subjects again, different speakers from different companies. So that's really cool as well. Today we have, for instance, Soasti and Arcady partnering up for this one. So that's also very nice. But we hope to keep the same awesomeness and take it to the next level from next year. We like this Teams format because we can interact really easy with each other and see each other. That's also nice. But maybe for the next time we can improve something. So in the end, there will be a small feedback form of 6 questions, not asking for any personal information, just asking about how we are doing and what you want to see, so we can provide it for you. And of course, if you want to speak, that's also possible in the next sessions. But talking about speakers, today we have Ankit. So please use your applause emoticons and heart emoticons. That would be really cool to see in the chat, because our ears are loving us if we use emoticons. With not Nuxt, not Next, but NestJS. Then give it up for Sander with Astro, your web on a diet. So that's great as well. Nice to see some applause. And in the end, we have another Sander, because we have double trouble, so to say. It will be very nice to see, and learning to love HATEOAS. Well, without further ado, I would say, Ankit, take the floor. The stage is yours, man. Drop your questions in the chat, please. In the end, there is some time to ask them in person, but we'll be first handling the questions in the chat. And let's enjoy the show. Ankit, here you go, man.
Thank you, Christian. I will share my presentation in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Exactly 5. Nice. Good programmer move. Here you go, Ankit.
Okay. Welcome everyone again to this last edition of Frontend Talks from Sojity of this year. I thought of showcasing NestJS and an introduction to an awesome framework. So, but before that, who am I? I'm a passionate developer, front-end developer living in Netherlands. My full name is too long, which is on the passport, but in short, Ankit Raghuvanshi. I am also HATEOAS certified diploma now, and very thankful that I am very stressful that I passed Dutch A2 level. I cannot speak that much, but I do understand. And I recently also passed my in the third attempt of CR auto theory, and that was really hectic and really troublesome. But I finally passed with flying colors. I live here in Amstelveen, which is close to Amsterdam. The people who are coming from outside of Netherlands, joining outside of Netherlands, it's a small city close to Amsterdam. I'm 35-year-old from India. Okay, next. Not next, Nest. What is NestJS and why are we here to learn this framework? First of all, this whole agenda of all the 3 talks are on front-end frameworks, but I thought to have a framework which every front-end developer should also be curious to understand and learn. Not only front-end frameworks, also a back-end framework or Node.js framework. So that's why I thought NestJS would be good option to if everyone is aware of it, then well and good. NestJS, you'll be thinking it is a front-end framework or a back-end framework, but it is a back-end framework, and I personally love it because I get an added advantage over my front-end skills to have also a knowledge on Node.js services, which my clients, my projects, which I work on, give me an added advantage, to serve my customers in both the ways. So, well, in the recent years, we have seen too many front-end frameworks, Angular, Vue, React, which have improved the productivity and has enabled the scope of fast, testable, and extensible front-end applications. However, there were also plenty of some tools library for backend frameworks, but they were not solving the purpose of architecture. And here comes the NestJS, which solves the architectural problem, which I thought it is. I was curious to know. Under the hood, NestJS makes use of HTTP servers framework like Express default, and you can also use Fastify. If you are a fan of Fastify, you can also configure that. But Express is by default configured, pre-configured. On top of that, it also exposes some web APIs from Express by default, which you can. Yeah, I thought my presentation was exposed. Yeah, I'm coming back. So the HTTP servers, Express API, you can make use of them, and not only you can use them as a free tool, but you can also add third-party modules as well. So Nest also uses a progressive approach, a progressive JavaScript approach in order to build an Node.js service, which has a fully support of JavaScript and TypeScript. If you're a fan of TypeScript, you can also use TypeScript, which is also pre-configured for you. It combines the element of object-oriented programming, functional programming, and reactive programming. So if you're a fan of RxJS, then it is also pre-configured for you. And finally, if you are familiar with front-end framework like Angular, then you can jump on it very quickly, like I was, and you can easily understand and learn NestJS if you are already familiar with Angular. The structure is highly inspired by Angular. And yes, so it's scalable and reliable in all the manners. So straight away I got fascinated, so I thought to share this. Next, some features. So there are multiple features of NestJS, but here I'm pointing out a few of them, but there are many more, and you can also look upon. So first thing first is modules. A module is the core, or you can say the core fundamental of NestJS. Using this, you can now organize your application into self-contained modules. And each modules have its own responsibility. It contains its constructor, its controller, services, and extra features. So one module is then responsible for handling the one part of your application, and that way it manages your entire application for you. A module is nothing but, if you are familiar with Angular, then ng module decorator. Here also we have similar @module decorator, which is then used to mark the metadata object to organize your app. So by default, a single app model will be provided, a scaffold will be provided to you when you npm install NestJS. But then on, you can increase your the more and more, if your application grows, then you can increase module by module, let's say user module or events module, etc. Yeah. Then the next would be before that. So here one such example, a simple model which you can see, and it's quite inspired by Angular, and that metadata object holds imports, controller, and providers, which I'll be taking the next slide. So it's pretty simple and straightforward class. Then a provider is nothing but it. NestJS gives you a beautiful feature is dependency injection. Using that, you can control the dependencies on your components, services, controllers, and middleware within your application. So the main idea behind that was to easily inject the services in your module, and then you can use it as many as time in the different modules or the controllers over the scope of your application. And it is fairly simple to use also. Like in Angular, you can easily import in your module and then use that as a reference in your constructor of your controller. So here is also same. Just reference the service in your constructor, and then here it go easy for use for your specific controller of your module. And a service or provider is decorated by @injectable, which is also quite similar to the Angular. Scope of your module, scope of your provider is basically throughout the lifetime of your application lifecycle. When your application is bootstrapped, the dependencies are resolved, and therefore they are provided instantaneously. But similarly, when the application is shut down, the provider is also destroyed. One such example is here, which I'll be also taking them in demo. So a gender prediction service is having an injectable decorator, and it's pretty simple and almost very close to Angular service. And they have HTTP service exposed from HATEOAS, which could be used to fetch the data from the third-party microservice, or you can also create your own a database, and through which you can also get the data. And RxJS was by default provided to you in the package JSON, so you don't have to manually install it. Then comes the third beautiful and yet important feature: exception filters and pipes. So every what say backend microservice application should have the exception layer. And here comes the NestJS, which gives you by default features. So NestJS comes with the inbuilt exception layers, which is responsible for processing all unhandled exception across the application. When an exception is not handled by your code, then it is caught by this layer, and then automatically sends an appropriate user-friendly response to you. So let's say a 500 is a pre-inbuilt exception layer in this architecture. So you don't have to handle that. It will be automatically thrown to the thrown out of the service. And you can also implement a custom exception as shown in the snippet. So here a find user is trying to also throw an exception when an user is not found. It's very raw code, but you know how to use it then are using a custom exception. And the above one is throwing in forbidden exception. So it's a pre-default. Then comes the pipe. It's also very important and highly used. So what happens when a client is requesting some information? Before reaching to the root handler of your service. So first it goes via exception layer. And then if it has passed successfully, then it goes to the pipe if you have configured pipe. So pipe is mainly used for transforming the input data or validating the input data before it could reach to the actual database or to the source where you are getting the information. So a pipe is decorated by a direct injectable decorator, and it can do some validations and transformation to the input data. So likewise, I said it can also have many built-in pipes, such as parse-int pipe, shown in the example. If your entered input is not integer, then it will throw straight away an exception of input data not being a number. And same as for Boolean or for float or you name it, they have enormous pre-default pipe for use, and you don't have to think much. As a small or big application would have at least minimum of these pipes available for you to use. If you still want to make a new pipe, a custom pipe, you can go ahead and create a custom pipe for yourself. It's also, that feature is also available to use. Then comes the middleware. If you are familiar with any Node.js service, then middleware is where you can do a lot of magical stuff. So a middleware is actually between the client and the root handler, and you can trace the request in between and then do a magical stuff there. So like in this example, it's logging a request, but you can do whatsoever you from the request or response. And it has basically it is called between the client and the root handler, and a middleware function has access to the request and response object and the next function. The next function here, it is commonly denoted as next method. So in this example, a logger middleware, a class having injectable decorator is exposed, and it has access to the request, response, and next function. And this middleware logger function can be then consumed by the other modules, such as module A or module B, or even at the parent app module. So it doesn't matter where it is being consumed. I'll show here. But wherever it is being consumed, it has to be decorated by or implemented by Nest module. And with the Nest module, you say you tell the module Nest module that your you are intersecting the or intercepting the request. So using the configure method of the class of the Nest module, you can easily configure such middleware like blocker middleware. And I have configured for roots gender predictor. So my gender predictor is one such module have this route param and whatever request goes through to this gender predictor URI, all will be logged in the logger. So I can write any any request or response, let's say to the Splunk or wherever you want to. Any error happened, you can directly log on Splunk. Let's say that way. And it would have been easy if it is given in the decorator itself on that model, but unfortunately not. You have to configure in this manner using configure method. And you can do it at the multiple places, or like I said, app, or even on the individual smaller scoped modules. Then fifth, CLI support. It has huge community as well. It CLI, it helps to you to initialize to develop and maintain your application. And in the multiple ways, the CLI is also helpful to scaffold a project very easily. You can just do yarn or npm install, and one default files a project is a scaffold for you, and which has all the features which I have just spoken before by default to you. And there are many VS Code extensions also available. I tried using one of them, and if you right click on any folder, then you have that popover on VS Code. It has several features such as easily to create a module, a controller, or a service, or an interface, or a middleware. You can easily create from there. But you can also use in Angular, we use ng generate service or a component. So here also we have nest generate, shorthand is G, a module or interface or etc. provider. So so that says that you can easily create your application and you're ready to go to production. So once your application is basically created, and then you can host it on your a server wherever you want to use, let's say Heroku or etc. How does it look like and getting started? So I'll share one more screen. Here. So yeah, before I jump onto the Postman, I'll show you how the project looks like. So I did not fish. Let me close all these. Yeah, so this is the project, and here I have a main.ts file, which is the main file of your application where the entire code is then bundled into. It exposes a bootstrap method, and using the nest factory, you can tell which is the starting app of your service. So here we have app model, which is the starting module, and then I'll get to this later on. Yeah, then it is also listening on 3000 port, simple and straight. And then I created a logger in between, a logger middleware, which is just doing nothing and logging a request, which is consumed in my main module. And I have two different individual models which are responsible for their job to get the nationality of nationality protection and the gender protection. I just use a simple free to use APIs to show the some response. And yeah, you can use a provider interface Yeah. If you are also familiar with Angular, then these should be quite familiar to you. At the rate get a decorator, if it is empty, then your all the requests will be handled by nationality predictor. If it has some a parameter, then you write it with colon XYZ. I have name, and then whatever comes after nationality predictor will be handled by this method. API tags, I'll come on this later on. So then if this is resolved and passed by all my exception layer and pipes, I'll get the response from my service, and my service is connected to an external API. So let's see, my port is, my server is running on 3000 port. So first of all, the first one, localhost 3000, nationality predictor, Ankit. If I hit this, then I get a response of my name. What is the probability of my name in India or US? So it says 98% in India and almost 0% in US. Let's see for Emule. NL is 81% and Belgium is 18%. So you know Emule now. You have names in Belgium. Similarly, in this API, it is also exposed by this gender predictor module. If you give a input data, it will tell you which gender you are from male and what is the probability and the count of whatever the API has built upon. So this was just to show the features of NestJS and not relying on the data, because it's just a dummy data from that API. And then you can test it on Postman, or you can also test it on localhost 3000. So here, and by default, Swagger will not be present. You will directly see input JSON, response JSON in the browser. If you have any browser plugin, then that JSON will be automatically configured for you. Otherwise, it will be just a simple string. But I thought to have a Swagger, and NestJS also gives you an opportunity to implement Swagger straight away using the Swagger a package, and then it's a pretty simple, straightforward. Set the title and description, set the version, and there are many more available methods. And then it is exposed on the localhost 3000, and then straight away from here also you can test your APIs. So let's say try it out with the name. Let's say Mule, and then it is tested. So this way you can also gives the advantage of documenting your API, so you don't have to think of that much. These name you have seen in API tags in my controller. API tags are then coming from that name is then grouped under. So if I have multiple APIs, then I can group with one tag. So if I provide API tags for predictors on all the module services, then they will be clubbed into one. And I think that was it. Let me go back to my main presentation.
Nice, Ankit. Well done. I think that's it, right?
Last slide of my presentation.
All right, let's share your screen then again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that was the thank you screen. So you can follow you can follow me using this QR code, which will directly link to LinkedIn.
Nice, Ankit. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Give it all up for Ankit with some cool emoticons, of course. It's always nice to see. Very well done, and nice method of the QR code. Well done, Ankit.
Yeah.
There is already a question in the chat, but before we handle that, I would like to thank you for presenting, of course. And it's really cool to see that there's something else like all the other frameworks, such as Angular, React, etc. So NestJS, really cool to look into. And also the API was kind of funny with the names as well.
Yeah, I've got a good question from Emil that it can be used by not only for REST APIs, also for GraphQL, which gives you a two-sided pathways. If you're a fan of GraphQL, then also you can easily in 5-10 minutes you can configure schema or code first approach for your GraphQL APIs.
Nice, great. I also have another question for you. There are a lot of features you've showed, but do you have a feature that certainly stands out for you? Like, this is my favorite feature?
Pipe and exception layers, I like that because then I can easily intersect what input data is and then play around with it. Plus the middleware function. I can then, like I said, I can log my information on Splunk, which can be then monitored by the team. So whatever happens, your application is then monitored on Splunk. And there are many.
There are many more. What's not to love? Right, great. I see is more on backend framework, and I see some more questions coming in. Great stuff.
I'm not sure if NX has the okay, nice. Yeah. Also, NX has great support for NSJ. NSJ. I have not tried that one, but I will try that. Tom, thanks, Tom.
Cool addition, Tom. Tom, cool addition. Nice one. Great that you're here again. Last time you were here as well, so cool to see you again. All right, I will take over the screen then, Ankit. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we are immediately going to our break. So please stretch your legs, grab a drink, grab something to eat.
Okay, thank you, Geraedts.
Yes, it's
visible.
My
slides visible?
Your slides are visible and your voice is loud and clear.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, so welcome. I'm going to talk a bit about Astro, a new framework that's going to put your website on a diet. So first about me. I'm Sander, front-end developer, born in Brabant, the most southern part of the Netherlands. And I moved up to Groningen, the most northern part, to be with my fiance. I've got a golden retriever called Luna. I like to run and play around with shiny tech, which actually resulted in me starting with 3D printing. If you've got questions about that after the talk, sure, go ahead. But how I got to Astro was through my love of running. I do really like to listen to podcasts when I'm running. And the most the podcasts I listen to the most are the Shop Talk Show and Syntax.fm. And they really talk a lot about new shiny tech, getting into the nitty-gritty details about it. But because they talk about so many new frameworks, I've given myself a rule that if I hear about a new technology or framework at least 3 times, I will go look at the website. So this is the website of Astro. At first, I took a look at it, and it really didn't convince me. I didn't understand what it was. Okay, there was a really nice video about it in 100 seconds of Astro, but who got time for 100 seconds? So I skipped. I just went through them in my day, and then I heard about it a bit more. And I got more curious. So then I take a look at their introduction post. And they said that they were a kind of static site builder. And that really took my interest. Because I was looking into a new way to build my website. The old one was built in Gatsby, but since I'm moved off of React, I thought, nah, I don't really want to continue using my my own site with a framework that I'm not using in my daily work. So then I thought, okay, let's try it and let's see how it goes. So what is Astro? Like I said, it's already a static site generator. So that means it converts the templates to HTML. So basically, the user goes to your website, goes to a URL, and the only thing that they get retrieved back is a HTML document, just a plain website, no PHP server needing to start up and get things from the database. Just here's your content, have fun. For the people who are familiar with static site generators, in the break, the other Sander talked a bit about Hugo. Astro is more towards the 11t Jekyll kind of site. If you don't know about that, those doesn't matter. I will come back to it. But the main selling point is that it compiles away all the JavaScript, and I've said all with an asterisk because some JavaScript will still be needed to, for example, click on a button. But every JavaScript that is needed to render the web page, for example, with Vue or React, that will be rendered completely away to make the site as fast as possible. You also note that it's currently in early beta. They say there may be bugs. There will be bugs. I've used it quite a lot now, and I've counted a few that I needed to either A, work around, or B, update my Astro version. Most of them were actually quite easy to work around, but since it's so young, thought let's give that warning. One of the other main selling points about Astro is that it's got an island architecture. On their website, they say they've got a BYOF mentality, bring your own framework. That means that you can use React, Svelte, Vue, whatever you want to use. They just built the website for you. And it also means that you can use multiple frameworks. So if you, for example, you want to use the Vue for the header component, you want a React sidebar and an image carousel in Svelte, go ahead. I would advise against that, but it is possible. For example, with my daily work, we're not using Astro, but we ran into a problem where we had an old component written in Angular, and we needed to make a wrapper around that to make it work in Vue. That was quite complex, while in Astro that is normal. You can take old stuff and still use it if it's still working, and then phase it out when needed. So currently out of the box, we've got React, Preact, Vue, Svelte, Solid, and Lit. But if, for example, you want a Angular renderer, I think probably by now the community already made that, but let's say Angular doesn't have one, you can use Angular, but you can make your own renderer for Angular, which is not that hard as I've seen in the documentation. Not done it myself yet, but it looked pretty easy for what it is. So what are currently some good and bad use cases for it? I want to preface this will change in the future. Because it's so young, there will be some bugs, and I wouldn't recommend it at this stage to go to build an enterprise product with it in. Good use cases now are, for example, a fun side project, your personal blog. Like I said, I made my own website and your general content websites are currently really good for it. Things like that, really content-heavy websites. So, for example, a Facebook would not be recommendable for this because you're taking away the most crucial part, which is that it is a static site generator. You can use dynamic content in it, but it's if the entire website is being dynamic, then it might defeat the point of it. So you because it's server-side generated or static site generator, you've got two places where you can generate your website. You can do it on the client time, which means you just render, or you just push the JavaScript to the website and let the user download the content from an API or whatever. This can be a good idea for user comments, ads, anything, any data that is user specific or will change really frequently. Also sensitive data, you don't want, for example, credit cards information being generated in a HTML file, which then can be leaked. But yeah, and you also got the build time, and that's a really good place for things that you can render statically. So blog posts, markdown content, really slow APIs that you just want to run once because they need to they take a lot of time to process. That's great for the build time. And yes, Sander, Fireship made a video about it. I just started the message. If you've got questions, by the way, just put them in the chat. Then I'll get to those. To talk more about those two places, on my personal website, I've got a kilometer tracker for how many kilometers I've run according to my Strava profile. Strava is a bit of Facebook for runners. Basically what it shows is how much I've ran. There are two possibilities. Thanks, Sander. To work with this. So first, I could do it client-side, meaning when the user visits my website, an API call is being made to Strava to get the current number. Or I could say, okay, I'm going to do it on the build time. This means that once it's being built, the API call goes, and that static value is being kept. So every time a user visits my website, it will see that exact number it was during the build time. I personally went with the last way. The reason is that the API was a bit tricky to work with. And it is not really that important data. Like if this data is still for 1 day, then that is fine. It doesn't really, it isn't critical data. And if it's really out of sync, then I can always start a rebuild. So what I've done is I've just set up a on a small server. I set up a cron job that rebuilds the website every day. And then it keeps up to date. And sometimes if I've got a really big run and I feel, how do you call it? I feel proud of it, then I'll just rerun it myself manually. I haven't done that one in a while. Okay, so let's get to the demo. I see that Emil posted a question. Could the use case be that if you have a React web app and you want to make it more SEO friendly, just to completely wrap it in Astro to make it all static? You could do that, but I believe that it will then still hydrate React into it. And if the content is then not generated on build time, it will still trigger the React fetch call. So you need to provide that data on build time. I believe that's correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably something that Suspense could solve. I'm not really into the React world at this moment. Yeah, so let's get to the demo. What I've here I've got a website with about 5 components, all in different frameworks. So you can see here a counter with React, Preact, Solid, and Vue. And then we also got Svelte. Here was React. And then we got 2 Astro components. Astro is completely static. They've got their own language. So you can use JavaScript in it, but it's just plain JavaScript, just as plain script text. And yeah, so you can do a counter within it, but it's just not. You would rather use something like React or Svelte or Vue for that. I've got this project from the Astro repository under their examples folder. And here you can see all kind of starter files. So you've got this general starter, you've got a block, everything that you could want. When I was building my own website, I heavily used this one. For example, the Tailwind CSS, I just wanted to go ahead, okay, how are they using the Tailwind config? Copy paste that one, put it in. Yeah, so these examples are really nice if you just want to look through it. And then they also have got a really good documentation. Really, they've got documentation. It's being worked on. Let's just say. So let's take a look at the code. So this is the index.astro. Every file within the pages. Wait, let me. This is probably really tiny. Let me make it a bit bigger. Yeah. So every Astro component in the pages directory will be generated. So we got the index.astro. So you can see that one right here. It's localhost 3000. And then we've got an about me, yeah, in Dutch over mij. And that's a markdown file. I'll come back to the markdown file, but if we go to the about me page, you also see that this component is being generated. So let's take a look at the index.astro. Yeah, Sander, this is just, he asked that markdown file is the same as in Hugo. It's exactly the same. This is just plain markdown that's being used. So that's really nice about it. That let's say you built an entire website in Astro with a lot of content in markdown. You can, and let's say Astro doesn't become the next best thing. Then it's you can still take your content with you. A lot of frameworks already support Markdown, but Astro is really heavily involved into making Markdown a first-class citizen, meaning that you can really move your content with you if you decide to switch frameworks. Yeah. So let's take a look at the index.astro. You can see here all the components being loaded. These braces, these minus symbols, are the part that's just plain JavaScript, or to be specific, Node JavaScript. And then you below those braces, you've got the HTML. So you can see here a style tag. All those style tags are encapsulated to the component, unless you use the colon global attribute, then it goes through the entire web page. Now you can see here it loads the React counter, Preact counter, solid, Vue, Svelte. This is the Astro component, the Astro, and this one is remain. That is that is if you want to rename your an Astro component to be something else, like they did it here. And then if you take a look at, for example, the React count, this is just plain React. Everything you see here you can use with Create React App, for example. Then let's take a look at the Astro components, which are really tiny. It's just you can use just HTML, or if you want to use if you want to use JavaScript, I should be able to type this. Yeah. And if you then want to use that, you use your standard template text, and that is just like this. And if we now save it, you can see if we go back to the where is it? Oh, I need to reload it. Yeah, so we see hello Astro, hello world. I did not reload that picture probably. Yeah. I believe that was it. Yeah. So, are there any questions? Oh yeah, wait. I forgot one thing. So the About Me page. That is, as you see here, the Markdown. But you can also see here a layout attribute that points to .layouts, blog post layout, blog layouts.astro, and you can see here. This is a layout file that you can use to style your Markdown files. So you have here the content. That's just like, for example, children in React. And then we got here the title and the publish date. Those come straight from the Markdown font matter. So we've got here the title, description, and publish date. And we can use those here as well. And then we can, we only need to inject this tiny part into our front matter to make it viable for Astro to be rendered. Okay, are there any questions?
Great job, Sander. I don't see any additional questions right now. Just when I say it, there's another question. That's great. I see a question from Sander to Brinke, of course. Can you explain front matter to me later? I guess Sander will. Great stuff. And you also asked, could Astro being used as the root of a micro front-end architecture? And what if multiple apps are using different versions of a same framework?
Regarding the last question, I'm not sure. Emil, are you referring to same versions of Astro, or same versions of, for example, or different versions of, for example, Vue?
Yeah, for example, Vue. Yeah.
Sorry?
For example, Vue. So within a micro front-end architecture, if you have like different projects, and for example with Webpack Module Federation, if one is running Angular 11, one is running Angular 12, it can smartly think like, to combine it, you can, have a bit of a merge strategy for those different versions.
I don't think there is anything as of yet that is really working for that, because it doesn't. It uses an internal version of, for example, Vue to render this currently. So if you are you have different versions. For example, in a future version, they would do it like this. Then that won't work unless you've got two different renderers created for those different Vue projects as of yet. That it may be possible that is coming in the future. I've not yet heard anything on the Discord about that being discussed. But yeah,
thank you. Cool.
Nice, good questions, guys. Very nice. All right, Sander, thank you. Please, give some applause for Sander with the emoticons, of course. That's very nice. We love that. So well done, Sander. Thanks for creating some time for us and presenting about Astro, your web on a diet.
No worries.
Great stuff. Well, from one Sander to the other Sander, I think we'll immediately go through. So Sander ten Brinke this time will present, of course, about learning to love HATEOAS. So let's see about that. Sander, the floor is yours. You can share your screen, and we will all be waiting and hanging on your lips.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
All right, if everything is all right, then I'll start. Well, good evening, everyone. As Katjan already introduced, my name is Brinke. And today, in these next 20 minutes, we will be talking a little bit about HATEOAS. I'm going to say that not a lot of you guys have heard about HATEOAS, nor do you guys know how to pronounce it, which I hope I can teach you. We're going to learn what it is, like what kind of problems can you solve with it, and I'm going to end up giving you some tips on how you can use it in your applications. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about me first, a little bit of an introduction. I am 26 years old. I live in Apeldoorn in the Netherlands, and I've been working at Arcadie, I think, for a bit more than 4 years now. I work mainly with like .NET and Azure, like focusing on backend and cloud stuff. But you can also ask me anything about stuff like app development, like cloud development, like DevOps or front-end architecture. I'm really interested in all of these things. And currently, I am working for CCV, which is a huge payment solution provider in the Netherlands, and working on all sorts of stuff. You can find a little bit of contact information and etc. right there. I was thinking of maybe adding another QR code, but I didn't have the time. So maybe next time. It was a great idea. Right. The agenda. Let's have a little look. So I want to start with introducing a problem that you might already be having in your applications, and I think you are. Maybe you don't realize it yet. And we're going to have a little look at what HATEOAS is. Like, what is HATEOAS and how can it solve our problem? And I'm going to end up showing you some code so you can understand it better. Then we'll talk about some alternatives and some alternative usage you can get out of HATEOAS. And we're going to end up with some useful links and final questions. Feel free, by the way, to ask some questions in the chat. I have my laptop right here with some more where I can answer questions. If the questions are a bit big, I might end up saving them for later. All right, a problem. Let's start. A problem that you are probably having is called client-side action logic. At least that's what I call it. And let's have a look. Let's have a look on what that looks like. Well, simply put, I'm gonna show you a couple examples here. You can already see tweet can be deleted. I have some examples that like mimic some Twitter APIs or Twitter API responses. It's completely fake. It just serves to me as a very good example. So let's say that we have to build a new feature where we render a delete tweet button like dynamically, so only if it can be deleted. Well, what you see here is some Angular code. And it looks basically like this. I think you guys can see it well enough. I don't need to zoom in. So what you see is the div, and it says ng if tweet can be deleted, render it. And the code below basically says, well, if the owner of the tweet is the same as the current user, and if the retweets is 1,000 or smaller, which I completely made up, then we want to render that button. All right, we've implemented this feature. But as developers, we also know that the API also wants something, and you always have to write like action logic and validation in the backend. So I've written a little bit of C# here. The server really doesn't matter. Just imagine that this code here gets called anywhere in your stack in your backend. Basically, the server also checks like, hey, can it actually be deleted? And we do the exact same thing. We take a look at the user ID. You take a look, are you actually the user of that tweet? And is the retweet amount smaller than 1,000 or equal to? Well, I maybe you haven't realized it yet, or maybe you've already read the slide. Anyway, there is a problem with this. The main problem that at least that there is with this solution is that you're going to have to redeploy and change a lot of things when you want to update this. Because what if a manager or a product owner comes to you and says, well, I want to change that retweet amount to 4,000, for example. You're going to have to change it in your backend, which is one deploy. And you're going to have to update your front end, which is another deploy. That's okay, that's 2 deploys. That's pretty all right. But in Twitter's case, you're probably also going to have like an iOS app, an Android app. I don't know, maybe they have smart TV apps. I don't have a clue, but they have lots of apps, lots of clients, which they're going to have to take care of. And in all of those clients, you're going to have to update that 1,000 to 4,000, for example, which is a lot of work, a lot of boring work that you really don't want to spend your time on. You want to spend your time on like building cool new features with NestJS or Astro, and none of these boring things. And yeah, imagine that you're done like with all of these little changes, and then Apple comes to you and says, well, no, we updated our policies again, and you're going to need like 2 more weeks to make changes to your app. And well, your manager says, well, we want to deploy this change all at the same time. Then basically you have to tell your manager that thanks to Apple, and of course the way that your application copies this action logic, this little change can take 2 weeks, which you really don't want to say to your manager if you like your job. So all of this trouble for just such a small change, what can we do about this? Well, listen well. A solution that you can use here is called HATEOAS. I really don't blame you if you mispronounce it or misunderstand its meaning, but I'm going to try my best. HATEOAS in the basics is basically something that you can add on top of REST APIs. It's like you can online you can find like descriptions of it. Like what we are using is like level 2 REST APIs, but HATEOAS makes it a level 3. And also it stands for, pay attention, hypermedia as the engine of application state. I know you don't understand it, so we're going to show you an example and try to get a bit deeper into it. So what does this really mean? What is HATEOAS in this case? Well, what I have for you here is a JSON response for the first tweet that was ever publicly made. So what we see here, of course, with my own HATEOAS on top of it, this is again an example. We see an ID, we see a user ID, some text, some favorites, some retweets, and finally we end up seeing some links. And that links, that's the magic part. The links here mean that we are adding some links to other things that you can do with this tweet. Because what we're saying here is like we reserve the client this tweet, and we have a retweet action that you can do with this thing, which is a post call to API/tweets/20/retweet. And the user could also favorite it by doing a post to API/tweets/20/favorite. All right, this is from the perspective of a reader. So like I'm looking at someone else's tweet, where the owner, this is the other example, the owner of the tweet will get different links because they are allowed to do different actions, perform different actions on their tweet. You see, for example, a delete, where they can delete their own tweet. They could also sell their tweet for $2.9 million, which actually happened a few months ago with that entire NFT and Web 3.0 business, which I really don't understand, but it's a good way to make money. So the thing I'm trying to show you here, except for getting into that NFT business, is to that you can, depending on the user, you can see that you have different links and actions available. And let's just go a little bit further to a list. So here you see that we have a list with items, and the item in the list itself also has a how do you say that? It also has a links array, but the list itself as well, like the add tweet. So for example, returning your list of tweets, and then your HATEOAS also says like, hey, you could also add a tweet. All right, let's let that sink in for a bit, because now we're going to try to explain that entire hypermedia as the engine of application state to you. I just want to say I didn't make this up. There was probably some kind of old guy that's probably old right now made this up. So let's take a look. So the response from your API, which is the engine, which is this thing that we're looking at right here, this thing. It shows the current state. This is the state. And the other possible state changes, which is the links. And we're using links, which is the hypermedia in this case. And in this example, we're only like doing the state changes. But if you look at like other examples of HATEOAS online, you can also see stuff like linking to the user, because we have a user ID here, or linking to yourself. And then you might think, that's a bit useless, isn't it? Why do all that work? And I agree. HATEOAS is not really used much in the wild, because originally HATEOAS was kind of intended so that you could like do one API call and your system could automatically render and generate an entire application and discover all the API endpoints on its own, thanks to all of these links, which, well, never worked out, because otherwise you would have known what this is. And I also don't recommend using it that way. I really like using this technology to fix the client-side logic. And just to show you, just to mention that this is something that is actually used, I've looked online, and GitHub and PayPal do use it. I couldn't really find that they use it like this method, but they do say they use it. Just haven't really figured out where, but at least I see the value in it. And hopefully after a couple slides, all, I think 40 of you also see it. So let's take a look. How do we actually apply this to solve the problem I mentioned? Well, here we have the very easy solution. What we did before is the backend performs that check, right? The backend performs the check to see, is the user the owner of the tweet, and is there less than 1,000 retweets? Well, now you can just say, this is an example in Angular. Let's just focus on the first bit. There's 2 examples. We have a property, show delete button, and all we have to do is we have to take a look at that tweet, to the links of the tweet that I mentioned before. And you can say, well, is there at least one link with the text delete? If that is the case, then the server has told you hey, here's a tweet and this is what you can do with it. You can delete it, I promise. So your client, doesn't matter which client it is, does not need to check that logic again. It can just say, well, okay, the server tells me it's deletable. So here's the div again, right below that. I am going to render this button, this component, the delete component. Good. And furthermore, for the people here that understand Angular a bit more, you might think I don't really like the idea of polluting my TypeScript with all of these, action properties. I would love to keep it in my HTML. Well, that's fine. I've written my own Angular directive here that says, well, I'm looking for this, this action, this link. And here is I'm passing in the tweet links here. And based on this, it's going to render the div, or if it's not going to render the div, whatever you prefer. Right. I also want to mention that you can think big here, just rendering a delete button is an option, but you could also say I'm going to make my entire page read-only because the API does not return an update link. So done, you don't need to check in multiple places if you need to make stuff read-only. Just once, just take a look, what does the backend say? And also stuff like the items in a list. Well, maybe you don't want to render items that are not selectable by the user, or the user should not be able to take a look at those. Oh, wow. Sander says he had a class on HATEOAS in college. Oh, thank you. That's really cool. That's really great to hear. Thanks. So I think I interrupted myself there, but yeah, having a list of items and saying, well, maybe I'm not going to render the ones that I don't care about because the user is not allowed to go to the details link, or I'm just not going to make them selectable. You can do all sorts of stuff with this. And basically, to summarize, any app, any client actually, it doesn't matter if you're using the biggest mess and spaghetti code of jQuery, iOS, Android, web forms, Windows forms. It really doesn't matter what you're doing. All you need to do is that your programming language supports arrays, which I hope it does. And you have to take a look that the delete link in this case is in there. And if it is, you're done. Just render it. So now manager comes to you and says, well, change that number to 4,000. And you do that on the server. And the server responds by now maybe not returning that delete link anymore because the logic changed on the backend. And all of your clients will immediately be updated because they didn't need to update. They only are checking your response from the API. All right. I'm going to show you some code here to show you a little bit more on how this is actually done, because I think that's pretty interesting. I'm just going to focus a little bit on this API response here. I wanted to fit it all in one slide, so I'm going to use my magical zooming function again. So this is basically the same Twitter response that you've been seeing a couple times in this presentation. I just just made it a little bit smaller. So our server is going to return this response. And how does the server do that? Well, it does that thanks to, and this is in this case, ASP.NET with C#. It does that by using some custom middleware, or if you're a real nerd about it, I should say MVC filter, but just ignore that. The code here is part of my own library for HATEOAS. I'm going to talk a little bit more about, well, why my own library, like, and I think in a slide or two. But basically, I just want to point out the easy things, and I don't want to go into all nitty-gritty with this. What you see here is you see a function, enrich async, and this method is going to get called when the request is done. So the server is preparing the response. Like it's, I have the tweet, everything is done. I'm going to send it to the client now. And we say, hold up, give us a second. What we're going to do is we're going to take that tweet, the model. We're going to add a delete link, which is this name, delete, and then like a link to it. And we're gonna do that when the tweet can be deleted. So this is like the core part of your application, which you only have to change once. That code I showed you before from C#. And we're also only gonna add that link when the user is actually authorized to do so, because you don't want to return a delete link when a user is not allowed to do so. Basically, pretty self-explanatory. And you could go completely crazy with all these kind of things. And yeah, if you're going to ask yourself, like, does this work? It does. At Arcady, we use HATEOAS in several projects, and basically we use this code. Yeah, no complaints about it whatsoever. And just to show you again this Angular example, so cool, the backend filled that links array. I already see some more talks about some more options about HATEOAS. I see a question, I think. Oh, no, never mind. I'll go back into that later. So just to go back onto that Angular bit is here, the server returned that filled links array, and we're just checking to see if that delete action is in that array. That's basically it. That's really easy to just remove all of this extra logic from all of your clients. Good. So some alternatives, question mark. Well, I want to talk about this for a second because you should get away from this presentation knowing that HATEOAS is a solution to this problem. I'm not going to say that it is the solution, because, for example, you could say, I'm not really using those links that you're generating, and I don't really care about that HTTP method that you're sending me. I think it's bloat. I think it's making my JSON response bigger. I don't care. That's fine. I have an example for you here where you just, send the name of the links. You could do that. The only thing that I would have to say about it is, well, you're getting rid of that HATEOAS standard. Like if you were exposing your API to different clients, they could make use of that HATEOAS, and now they need to write something custom to do so, which is something you could think about. Something else I found, well, sounds very promising, but maybe kind of complicated. So I'm going to leave this as an exercise to the reader. You could also say that you're going to render that HATEOAS like on the server. So if you're doing server rendered applications, you could say that you have a div there on the bottom right, with the anchor tag, and it already contains that link to the retweet modal and the favorite modal. So if you have maybe a pretty standard looking web page and you dedicate a certain part of that page to just rendering those HATEOAS links on the server, you could prevent a lot of if-else statements in your HTML, on your server rendered HTML. I haven't implemented yet. I thought it was a really cool idea. You can read more about it later. But yeah, if you're going to try this out, I'm very curious what your experience is. Let's continue. So it's time to implement it yourself. I'm gonna give you some useful resources. Well, here's some information. I ended up during Hacktoberfest with creating my own HATEOAS library. It's still in development. So it's not, I didn't publish a package yet, but if you want to start, if you want to contribute, there's issues, very easy to start with, I think. If you just want to talk about this, hey, how do I do this with your library? How do I do that? I can create the documentation, create some new features, would be really cool. But if you're well, I want to kind of get started with it already, just give me a working thing for .NET, take a look at the other link. I think it's a bit more bloated, a bit less testable than my version, but maybe you can get a good taste at least from it and then move on to my much better library later. And for everyone else here that's using different languages, different frameworks, I'm sure in your package manager of choice, just enter HATEOAS. I think people actually already did so. And just, implement it and use it there. And finally, some links that I will share in the chat afterwards, you can have a look at to read some more about HATEOAS. Right. Well, that's the end of my presentation. If there's any other questions that you guys want to type or talk with me about right now, that will be the best moment. And otherwise, I would just thank you for attending. Thank you for listening. Feel free to contact me. I might just change my website to use Astro soon, and take a look at my projects or my email or LinkedIn, whatever you want. I will gladly speak to you more about HATEOAS.
Great, Sander. Well done. Thank you. I already see the applause coming in, so that's great. Third time's the charm, I guess. Very cool. I also like the presentation style of the magical zoom button you used. Yeah, so that's really easy to follow as well. Nice one. There are still some questions, I think.
Yeah, I see them. Hold up 1 second.
Great.
Let's have a look. I forgot about Twitter on his smart refrigerator. That's a very good point. That's another important client that you don't want to have to update. I see someone saying here they provide a set of URL key values to tell you what API calls are relevant for the user. That could actually be the HATEOAS part. Yeah, maybe after the presentation, after the stop sharing, I can have a little look at that. And you'll see some other stuff. Question, is HATEOAS only effective for enterprise solutions, or are there also use cases for middle-sized projects companies? Definitely. I mean, we've been using HATEOAS in a new school project that we've been building at Arcady, which is basically not a lot more than a list and some nice detail pages for students to fill in some information, really small. And you can basically use it in the smallest applications that you want. That's the thing. If you're going to implement HATEOAS the way it's intended, where you link to every other possible action, every other possible entity, you're gonna be in enterprise world, and I don't think you want to be there. So just keep it small. And I think that was it, right?